You know that person who literally cringes when you suggest watching the new Marvel movie? Friday night rolls around, everyone's hyped for explosions and car chases, and they're suggesting a character-driven drama instead. Action movie night? Hard pass. They'd rather watch paint dry than sit through another 2 hours of CGI destruction. And honestly, the psychology behind it is way more complex than just they're boring or they don't like fun. There's actual brain science happening here, and it reveals some fascinating truths about empathy, overstimulation, and how we process the world.
Here's the thing. People who avoid action movies aren't just being picky about entertainment. Their brains are literally wired differently. And the research shows some wild connections between movie preferences and personality that nobody talks about. But there's also a hidden cost to being this sensitive that might be affecting their relationships and how they experience life.
Let's start with what's actually happening in their brain. Ever heard of mirror neurons? They're these brain cells that fire when you watch someone else do something, basically letting you feel what they're experiencing. Everyone has them, but for people who can't stand action movies, these neurons are cranked up to 11. When they see someone getting punched on screen, their brain doesn't just observe it, their brain experiences it, like actually feels it happening to them.
This is especially true for highly sensitive people. Research shows their mirror neuron systems are way more active than average. So when you're casually munching popcorn during an explosion scene, their nervous system is going into full fight or flight mode. They're not watching the movie, they're living it, and that's exhausting. But here's where it gets deeper. Action movie avoiders tend to score high on something called neuroticism and conscientiousness. Translation? They feel emotions intensely, and they pay attention to details. Those fast cuts, shaky cameras, and non-stop chaos that action movies love, that's not exciting to them. That's sensory overload. Their brain is trying to process every detail while everyone else is just vibing with the spectacle. Think about it. Action movies are designed to overwhelm your senses. That's literally the point. But for someone whose brain is already processing the world in high definition, it's like being force-fed information at a speed their system can't handle. The anxiety doesn't come from the plot. It comes from their brain desperately trying to keep up with the visual chaos. Now, here's the controversial part. People who hate action movies are often way more empathetic than average, and that empathy becomes a problem when they're watching someone suffer on screen, even if it's fake. Studies show that drama and character-driven film fans have significantly more active emotional processing centers. They don't just see a character in pain, they feel that character's pain, intensely, viscerally, for hours after the movie ends. And that's where the hidden cost comes in. While you move on to dinner after the movie, they're still emotionally processing what they watched. That violence, that tension, that suffering, it stays with them, like a mood they can't shake. Research on highly sensitive people shows they can feel the effects of disturbing content for days, sometimes years. One study participant mentioned still feeling physically ill when remembering a violent movie they watched 12 months prior. That's not a weakness. That's their brain refusing to file away trauma, even fictional trauma.
Here's what makes it even more interesting. Action movie haters aren't running from excitement, they're running from emptiness. When researchers asked people why they avoid action films, the common thread was this: what's the point? All spectacle, no substance. Explosions for the sake of explosions. Characters who are basically cardboard cutouts with abs. The plot is predictable. Good guys win, bad guys lose. Nothing changes, nothing sticks. And for someone whose brain craves depth and meaning, that feels like a complete waste of time. They're not being snobs. They genuinely don't understand why anyone would choose to watch something that leaves you feeling nothing afterward. It's like eating a meal that looks amazing but has zero flavor. Sure, it was visually impressive, but you're still hungry. But there's something critical here that nobody warns you about. When you only consume media that mirrors your emotional sensitivity, you start living in an echo chamber of feelings. You become so attuned to subtlety and nuance that anything loud or direct feels aggressive. Your tolerance for different types of stimulation shrinks. You've accidentally made your world smaller by only engaging with art that matches your specific frequency.
The flip side? These are often the same people who are wildly creative and introspective. Research shows people who prefer dramas and character-driven stories score higher on openness and emotional intelligence. They're the ones who notice things others miss. They read between the lines. They understand human behavior on a level that action movie fans might never access. That depth is their superpower. But it's also their vulnerability. Because when everyone else is bonding over the latest blockbuster and they're sitting there feeling alienated, that sensitivity becomes isolation. They're not part of the cultural conversation. They're always the outsider, suggesting the weird artsy film nobody wants to watch. Here's the really wild part, though. The divide between action lovers and action avoiders might actually come down to dopamine. Action fans get a bigger dopamine hit from external stimulation. Their brains reward them for watching chaos and excitement. But people who hate action movies, their dopamine system works differently. They're less driven by external rewards and more motivated by internal satisfaction. That quiet character moment that makes you think for days, that's their dopamine hit. And here's what nobody talks about. Action movie avoiders often started this preference during a formative period. Maybe they watched something too intense, too young, and it stuck with them. Maybe they grew up in a chaotic environment and movies became their escape into calm, not into more chaos. The preference isn't random, it's protective. Their brain learned early on that overstimulation equals danger, even in fiction.
So, if you're the person who's been labeled boring for not wanting to watch Fast and Furious 47, you're not boring. You're just operating with a different nervous system. Your brain is protecting you from overstimulation while craving meaning and depth, which is actually genius if you think about it. You're just being selective about what gets access to your emotional bandwidth. But here's the question you need to ask yourself. Are you avoiding action movies because they genuinely don't work for your brain? Or are you avoiding them because you've built an identity around being too sophisticated for mainstream entertainment? Because there's a difference between protecting your nervous system and using your sensitivity as a shield against connection. Bottom line, what you watch reveals how your nervous system operates. Maybe you're drawn to dialogue-heavy films because your brain processes emotion differently. Maybe you need slower pacing because rapid cuts overwhelm your senses. Maybe explosions genuinely stress you out on a physiological level. All of that is valid. But ask yourself this, when you shut down every action movie suggestion, are you respecting your limits or reinforcing them? There's a version of this where your sensitivity expands your world, and a version where it shrinks it. Which one are you choosing? Anyway, if this video messed with your head a little, hit that like button and drop a comment about your own movie preferences. I'm genuinely curious what genres your brain gravitates toward and why. And if you want more psychology breakdowns that'll change how you see everyday behavior, subscribe because we're just getting started.